Modernity encroaches. 20th century angst. God is dead and we are left alone with our technology and our nightmares.
If you would be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself for the podcast?
Hi guys, this is Jon DeRosa from Aarktica, calling from Los Angeles, California.
How would you describe the music that you make and that Aarktica makes?
Well, Aarktica has been around for close to 20 years now, and the music has changed quite a bit over those years. So when we started out in the late 90s, it was very much in the vein of guitar, drone, ambient, very much influenced by bands like Flying Saucer Attack and Windy and Carl and things like that. And then over the years, we kind of developed and changed and made different types of records and involved a lot of different live musicians, and always really focused on using organic sounds and instruments as opposed to synthesizers to make atmospheric music. So we've kind of been all over the gamut from ambient and some jazz type sounds to more of like a post-rock thing. And I feel like now with the release of the newest record, Mareación, is sort of coming back a little bit full circle to more of the minimal guitar ambient type work, that I started out doing in the late 90s.
Let's talk about your musical background a little bit. You mentioned that this project has been around for about 20 years. Was this the first project that you had?
No, I've been playing music since I was, in my early teens, and I actually had quite a few projects, underway before I started Aarktica, and it was very much in the goth genre. There was a band I had called Dead Leaves Rising that had a few records out in the like mid to late 90s, I guess. That was more in the sort of goth folk genre, and I think you could still find those out there if you search. So, and there was a few other projects I was kind of doing around the same time. I was just always playing around and always playing with people and always trying different stuff musically.
What led you to this ambient music, the style that you're playing now?
It's really hard to say. I mean, I started Aarktica when I was about 18, and the story goes is that I lost my hearing in my right ear. I had kind of a freak medical thing, and the hearing loss caused a lot of auditory hallucinations and a lot of very strange sort of aquatic sensations, and it was really kind of scary and kind of required me to sort of relearn how to hear, relearn how to be in the world, because when you lose your hearing on one side, you get very off balance. You lose a lot of the ability to tell where things are coming from. And on top of it, this strange like auditory hallucination that kept happening. So I think I started Aarktica as a sort of way of trying to recreate those sounds as I was hearing them. And in a way, it kind of became very therapeutic and allowed me to express a lot of the isolation and the loneliness and the fears that I think I was going through at the time. And I guess it was just through that it evolved into different things over time. And I would have these ideas for an album, and then that's what it would be for that era, for that year or two or three. I think also in terms of me listening to ambient music, when I was growing up, I was very much into like project records, bands like Black Tape for a Blue Girl and Lycia. And they were also putting out some of the older acts like Steve Roach and some of the more ambient acts like Vidnab Mana. So, I mean, even growing up from my early teens, that was like the music I was listening to. And I was really just, fascinated by it. And it evolved into Aarktica eventually.
Now, this hearing loss that you described, are you still experiencing it?
Yeah, I haven't had hearing in my right ear in about 20 years.
Were you able to get a diagnosis of what the cause was?
The speculation is that I had an ear infection that was painless, which would be a really rare thing, because, the idea when you have pain, it's the body telling you something's wrong so you can do something about it. But if something's wrong with you and there's no pain, it can be kind of dangerous because something's going on that's destructive in your body, and you don't know until it's too late. And in the case of my hearing loss, the speculation was that I had a very violent ear infection that produced no pain. So the first indication that something was wrong was the hearing just going right out. I don't know 100% if that's correct, but that's about the best explanation that I've gotten. And it sounds like, plausible. So
This is, do you mind talking about this?
No, of course.
No. So this is fascinating to me because, as a musician, you need to hear things in stereo. You need to hear things when you're mixing. To what extent are you able to I'm not sure if I'm phrasing this correctly, and I apologize. But to what extent are you able to hear and experience your own music the way other people do?
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess I'll never really know. You know, the irony of me losing my hearing when I was in my late teens was that it happened while I was a student at NYU, and I was studying music technology. And that was a little bit why it was so devastating, because I was kind of committing my life to being a music producer, music engineer, and right in the early stages of that, this hearing loss happened. And in that moment, I knew that I would never be able to work in a studio. You know, I would never be able to be an engineer. I would never be able to produce records because nobody would want to hire someone who's deaf. And I think that also lent itself to why it was so important for me to start making music in the way that I heard it, because I needed to figure out how to do it. You know, I needed to figure out how to do this. And I ended up finishing my degree. I went to 4 years of school for recording music and engineering and stuff with, you know, one bad ear. It was really hard. I somewhat learned to compensate, I guess. I think, you know, the body is pretty amazing that way when we figure out ways to, you know, things adapt. And to be honest, it led to me working with Lamont Young, who became kind of a mentor of mine. And, you know, the context is that I was volunteering at his sound installation in New York City. And for anyone that doesn't know Lamont Young, he's considered to be the grandfather of minimalist music. Anyway, he had heard about what had happened with my hearing, and he called me to his apartment, and he said, you know, I think we can help. I think we can help you. And that's when I started studying Indian raga music with him. And in doing that, it was also an exercise in how to hear in stereo with one ear somehow. I can't really quite explain how to do it, or, you know, or if it's really a thing, but that's how I know that it changed the way I looked at the hearing loss.
So it's a little bit of a cliche when we speak about music being felt instead of just heard, but especially, you know, a lot of heavy guitar-based music is, you know, sometimes it has a very physical reaction when you're experiencing it live. Would you say that Aarktica fits into that category? Is this music that is meant to be experienced physically as well as just heard?
I think that, you know, I would never tell someone how they should, you know, experience the music I make. I think, you know, I've heard some people say, oh, it's really nice in the background while I'm doing other things, you know, and then I've heard other people say that it is something that they really need to devote full attention to. I think that in this last record and also the one before it was called In C, I'm coming back into this space of much more nuanced sounds, much more subtle sounds that can be experienced on a lot of different levels. So it can be the beautiful music that you fall asleep to, or, you know, it can be something that you devote more full attention to. I don't know if that really answers your question very well, but that's what I got.
So let's talk about this new album. In August, you released the first Aarktica album since 2009. Would you mind saying the title for me?
It's called Mareación.
What does Mareación mean? What does it refer to?
So the word Mareación refers to, it's a reference to shamanic plant medicine ceremonies. And there's a moment in the ceremony, and when I say plant medicine ceremonies, this can be, working with some different types of consciousness altering medicines that are prevalent in South America and indigenous traditions. So the word Mareación refers to an energy in the shamanic ceremony where the spirit of the plant arrives at its most powerful and intense. And in this moment, in this state of its presence, a profound level of healing becomes possible.
So I would like to talk about the idea of plant medicine and the way it influenced the album briefly. But first, this is the first album that you've released under the Aarktica name since 2009. Why the long gap?
For the past, I would say, over the past 7 or 8 years, I had been making music under my own name, as Jon DeRosa. And the music had been decidedly different and much more vocal-based, much more with a bit of a retro sound, a much more orchestral sound. And I had just really been focusing on that. It was just a sort of a mindset that I was in. I was doing some tours. I guess I get into a headspace where it's like that's the thing I'm doing for a particular amount of time. And I kind of reached a point with that where I got a little bit fatigued. It was feeling hard, and I think returning to Aarktica felt like something I really wanted to do because it really feels like my home. It really feels like the thing that it's the thing I keep coming back to after 20 years. And, I started Mareación, probably 2 years ago, and it took a little bit of time to actually make. So I would say that's probably why there was a long gap there.
Where was the album recorded?
Mareación was recorded in Los Angeles. I did did quite a bit at home in my home studio, and did some work in another studio as well.
So your home studio, is this Inditopia?
No, that's my buddy's place.
Okay.
Yeah, the home studio is called Glacia Home Studio, and it's the most minimal of setups. I really like to work really simply.
Let's talk about plant medicine a little bit. This is taken from the album notes. It says that the album was influenced by shamanic plant medicine ceremonies and intended for post-ceremony integration, healing work, meditation, and deep journeying. So, within rock music, there is, and not just rock music, throughout jazz and ambient experimental music, there is this idea of using music as a way to achieve altered states of consciousness or to emulate other kinds of consciousness-altering chemicals and things like that. To the extent that this album was influenced by plant medicine, or that revolves around the idea of shamanic practices that include plant medicine, is it important for the listener to understand what that means personally and to experience that?
No, I don't. I mean, not at all, really. I was inspired by my experiences working in shamanic healing, and that's something I've been pretty much have devoted my life to for the past 7 years. And it's in these states of consciousness that I feel most open, and also most kind of connected to whatever you want to call divinity or inspiration or whatever. And I think that the beauty and the reason that I wanted to make this particular record was because not everyone will experience, not everyone will, should, or may experience these states. And I kind of wanted to give a bit of like my own interpretation of how these things, how I hear these things sonically. It's like sometimes you see these people painting beautiful visual paintings of, images that you might see in a plant medicine ceremony. Or, to me, this was sonically how it feels for me. And so much of the experience of doing this deep healing work is how we recover from it. And I thought, how nice would it be to have these beautiful pieces of music to listen to afterwards and in the weeks that follow, so that during a meditation or something, you can be cradled by it. So I think that that's like, one level of listening, but I don't think by any means that in order for it to be appreciated, you need to have these experiences. I don't think that on any level. I think that you can really appreciate it for, the beauty that I hope it is.
It's interesting because this is the second time in recent months that I've spoken to a musician who's integrated some form of healing, using music as a way of healing and using music as a way of something other than just music. I spoke to a musician who is implementing isochronic tones and binaural beats into his recordings in a very similar manner to what you're speaking about, which is, a way to achieve a kind of meditative or, relaxed state. What is other than the fact that you are a musician and you also have the interest in these ceremonies and shamanic plant medicine, what do you think the link is between music and, meditation or alternative healing?
I think that, music is it's the thing that connects us all. It's the language that connects us all. So, the best way I can describe it is when we do work within a shamanic ceremony, whether or not there's plant medicines are involved or something like that, there's so many times where you may be touched so deeply by a song that you don't understand the words. It may be in a different language, but there's something about it that makes you feel connected. And when I say connected, I mean connected to humanity and, connected to divinity and connected to whoever is around us. So I think that music is sort of the natural universal language, even though that's a bit of a cliche, but, you see it in children. And I think it's just sort of a way to communicate when words fail, melody and tone. And, it's something that brings us back. And I think it's really useful in healing work.
So I'd like to talk about a few of the songs on the album. The second song, Don Francisco's Blues, has field recordings that you recorded in Peru. How did you end up going to Peru, and what was the nature of the field recordings that you included with the song?
So I have traveled to Peru several times, and that time in particular, I was doing some work in Iquitos, which is in the rainforest in the Amazon. And I have a teacher and friend that I've worked with for a few years, and his name is Javier. And Javier brought myself and about 8 or 9 others of his students to the deep rainforest to work with his teacher, who's named Don Francisco Montes. And Don Francisco is a pretty well-known shaman from the area. And what I was doing during that visit was about a month-long, what we call dieta, where we go into the jungle and live in pretty much an isolated state, and we do different types of healing work with specific plants. And it's really challenging and very, very deep. And we do that because that is how, in a shamanic culture, you build relationships with healing plants. You spend time alone with them. So there was an awful lot of time sitting in the jungle alone, and it's been a little while, so I can't recall exactly, but I did record as many field recordings as I could, and some of them were songs that I asked Don Francisco to sing and to teach me, and others were just the sounds of the forest, because I mean it's just totally unbelievable there, especially at night, where everything just like becomes a big party with nature. I don't mean like a party, but it's like everything wakes up. So some of the recordings from that song are from my time there. Yeah.
What part of Peru were you in?
In that particular time, I was in Iquitos, which is more by the in the Amazon, by the Amazon River. A lot of times when I visit Peru, I'll be down more in the Andes and the Sacred Valley. But that particular time, I was in Iquitos.
It's interesting. You spent a lot of time living in 2 of the biggest cities in the world, New York and LA. What was the fascination with Peru? How did you end up choosing that as a place to go?
You know, the irony was like I reconnected with a really good friend of mine. This is about 8 years ago. I reconnected with a really good friend of mine that I grew up with. We hadn't spoken in like 15 years. And like he wasn't on like Facebook or anything. So, you know, it was really like 15 years. And I was like, so what have you been doing? And he says, well, you know, I'm a shamanic practitioner. And you know, we started talking, and I learned a little bit about what he did, and he told me about his work in Peru, and I said, you know, that sounds really interesting. Like, I'd love to go there. And I did research, and I realized, like, you know, there's a lot of people that you don't want to work with down there. And I decided that if I'm going to do this, I want to do this with my friend who, you know, I trust. So I went down there and I met him during the next time he was going, and I spent a few weeks. And that's how it started. And I'm really glad I did it that way.
So the album is mostly instrumental, but there are a few songs that have vocals. One of them is the song Golden City, All Is Love, which has a duet between, I don't know if you characterize it as a duet, but it has you sharing vocals with Nicole La Liberté.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, is this the same Nicole La Liberté who was in Dexter and Twin Peaks?
Yeah.
Wow. So how did you end up working with her?
She's one of my best friends in Los Angeles. She's just, we met doing similar healing work, and we started singing together a little bit here and there, and just have an amazing time doing it. She's like one of my favorite people to sing with and to do music with. So we don't get to do it too often, but it was a great opportunity for us to to sing that song for the record. I'm really glad that we did.
Yeah, the song is great. It's I mean, to me, it's the standout song on the album, and it really reminds me of the band Earth. I'm not sure if you're a fan of the band or if you're that familiar with their work, but there's something about the twangy guitar with the very sparse, slow drums that reminds me of Earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a few of the songs on the album have videos created by Brian Griffith from the band Electric Sound Bath. How did you end up A, choosing the songs to create videos for, and B, working with Brian?
There's actually one more video that we'll be releasing soon for the song Blossoming. I just realized that off the top of my head. But I think that, I kind of picked the songs that I felt most connected to, and I wasn't really concerned with keeping them short or picking the conventional quote unquote singles or whatever. It started with wanting to do the video for Her Divine Light because I really wanted a visual accompaniment to that song, something that could be a bit meditative and bring someone into kind of another state of consciousness. And then I said, we should do a few videos. And so that's how it started. Brian and I have known each other for many years. He's a great ambient musician. He's playing out all the time in Los Angeles. He goes also by the name Grey Ghost. I really love what he does, and also what he does with Electric Sound Bath. I think he and I first met about 5 years ago when I was doing shows for my own music for one of my records that came out, 5 years ago. And he's just a great guy, man. I mean, he's super talented, and he's done a lot of design work for me, and also musical stuff too.
Listeners will be able to find the videos on YouTube and through the Aarktica Facebook page. I'm going to attempt to describe the videos. They're very abstract. They take what seems to be, I don't know if you describe them as time-lapse, but still videos of sunsets and I guess the outdoors, and they're heavily color corrected to the extent that they feel like what you would. Well, I've never personally used psychedelic substances, but I'm assuming the experience is similar to watching the videos. Would that be fair to say?
You'll have to ask Brian for sure, but I think Brian does a lot of work with analog video processing, where the effects mimic kind of what it would be for in an actual technical sense. A lot of working with a lot of kind of more video type based effects. And I will say that I don't know if the effects of the videos mimic, the plant medicines that I'm most familiar with, which would be ayahuasca or San Pedro. But they might for some people, and I'm sure that they do mimic the effects of certain things for sure.
one last thing about Aarktica that I'd like to ask you about is on the previous album in C, you recorded a Danzig cover. You recorded a version of Am I Demon?
Yeah.
Tell this Hesher, tell this aging metalhead, why Danzig and why that song in particular?
Man, you might need like another hour of tape for me to start talking about Danzig, because that's sort of my thing.
Well, I guess, I mean, I don't want to lead you in one direction or another, but to me, it was a little bit of a left turn because I'm not that familiar with your music, and I'm not really, I haven't really gone that deep into ambient or experimental music. I grew up on Metallica and Iron Maiden and Megadeth and stuff like that, so I'm very familiar with Danzig. And when I saw this cover, when I saw you had recorded this cover, it was kind of a weird. No, you mentioned that you had come from this goth background, and I am familiar with stuff like Blue Tape for a Black. What is it? Blue Tape for a Black Lady?
Black Tape for a Blue Girl.
Black Tape for a Blue Girl, yeah. And so I'm somewhat familiar with that stuff, but to me it seems like a completely different world from what Danzig does, and that kind of rock heavy metal. Yeah.
So I mean, before I was into all of that ambient stuff and all the goth stuff and all, I was probably the same as you. I mean, I was deeply into heavy metal when I was in my early teens, and Danzig for me was everything. It was like my favorite band in the world. And right around the time that Lucifuge came out, which was like 89, 90, I was cleaning out my grandmother's garage in Lodi, New Jersey, which is where I'm from. And I found a copy of Walk Among Us on vinyl in her garage. I don't know whose it was. A lot of people from my family left stuff in there, but you might know that Lodi, New Jersey is the home of the Misfits, the home of Danzig. And so I was kind of piecing it together that like, oh, I'm from the same place that like Glenn Danzig's from. And it just led to like an entire adolescence of like, I had a Misfits cover band in high school, and Danzig was just like always my favorite band. And because I was from Lodi, and it's a pretty small town, there was always like a little bit of a family intersection. Like I found out that Steve Zing, who is the drummer for Sam Hain, was a good family friend, and he kind of took me under his wing when I was a teenager and showed me around the neighborhood. And I met Glenn Danzig's dad when I was a teenager because he knew my aunt from town. So there was like a whole lifetime of like these intersections. And if there's anyone listening who's really into Danzig, I did write an article for Pitchfork many years ago called Stuck in Lodi. And it's really all about the Misfits in Lodi, New Jersey. So that all being said, I had just kind of wanted to do a bit of a tribute, and I didn't want it to be hokey. Like I really wanted it to be, I really wanted to do a song justice and not have it be like a gimmicky thing or making fun of it or whatever. I kind of was trying to find a way to meld, what I do as an ambient artist with what Danzig does. And I just felt like Am I Demon is one of those songs that might work that way. And that's how it happened,
Yeah, and as somebody who grew up on Maiden and Priest and stuff like that, I have to say I do get a little bit tired of these kind of tongue-in-cheek, somewhat mocking, somewhat in tribute covers of old metal songs. And your version of Am I Demon is very straight, and it's not sarcastic or tongue-in-cheek at all.
Yeah, it wasn't meant to be, ironic or anything like that. It was like, even, Danzig's like one of my top, 5 bands of all time. And I always felt that like there was an element of, Danzig's production is so specific and in a certain way. And, and I just felt, that song in particular had a lot of nuance to it. And I think it's definitely a proud moment for me. I'm really proud of that song.
Very cool. So before I let you go, tell me what's next for you. What do you have planned?
So, musically, I'm sort of, I hope to do some more work as Aarktica. I'm a little bit, I'm not consistently putting out music like I used to, and we'll see what happens. My work right now is I work in a field called somatic healing, and it deals with helping people work with trauma and helping people live better lives. So, my life is really about that right now. And I think that, musically, I'm starting again to think about what I want to do next. And I would expect there to be some more Aarktica music in the coming years. But right at this time, I don't have anything. I don't have anything just yet. But there will be a new video for a song from Mareación that'll be out, if not before the end of the year, then early in the new year. And yeah, so that's about all I have right now for that.
The new Aarktica album, Mareación, is available through all the streaming sites, correct?
Yep, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, all of those, and also direct through Bandcamp, so aarktica.bandcamp.com.
And are you doing physical releases as well as digital?
We just decided to do digital for this. We're going to see if there's any real interest, and we potentially might do something limited. And the other thing that I forgot to mention is we'll be remastering. There was an Aarktica album called Morning One that was an EP from about 2000, and it was the second Aarktica release. And it's not available on any of the streaming sites right now and hasn't been ever. And I'm going to be remastering that album and re-releasing that in the new year as well. Not sure about physical, but it'll be out there at least for streaming for the time being.
And if people want to follow Aarktica or your other musical projects, how can they do that?
Facebook's probably the best. And also, just I have a site, aarktica.com, or the Bandcamp is great too, because I'm always uploading new stuff. So yeah, any of those things.
This is kind of off topic, but how did you get involved with Silver Media? Because they're the ones who actually sent me a promo of the new Aarktica album.
Silver was the label that put out the first Aarktica record in 1999 called No Solace in Sleep. I met Brian, who runs Silver, when I was about 16 years old at a concert in Chicago. And we became really close. And for a while, I was actually helping a lot with Silver, working with him. And Silver actually put out several of the past Aarktica records, including there was one called Pure Tone Audiometry. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there may have been one other. So yeah, Brian and I have known each other for probably almost 25 years.
I really have no idea how I ended up on his mailing list, because my blog is for the most part, death and black metal. And, I do like a lot of like drone and stuff like that, but it's not really something I know too much about. And then I just started getting promos for his label. And, that's how I found myself to Aarktica and a bunch of other things that I like Yellow Six. And, it's interesting. I don't really know that much about the music or how it's recorded and how it's made, but I am, kind of appreciating this stuff. And like I said, it reminds me of other stuff I listen to, like Earth, and I don't know.
Yeah. Hey man, it's the other side of the coin. It's like we all like to mellow out sometimes.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's it, man. I totally appreciate you taking the time to reach out. It's been nice.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Adrian. Take care.